Hey, in today's video, we will see how we can implement the arrays in Python. So mostly the code interpreter we will be using is Google Colab. And if you open it, you will see some sort of a familiar face like this one. So what you have to do is to just click on the new notebook if you're not familiar with it. If you are, that's where you will. So I'll just click on the new notebook. It will take some loading and it will just loads up. Okay, so now in this one, for the ones who don't know how to work with it, it's like a cells, and every time we just add a cell, we're going to keep a new cell. And these cells are used to write the code, and these cells are interlinked with each other. Everybody knows that what's going on the other cells. Like if I create a variable in this cell and call it into this cell, it's going to print out because it's know that it is already being there. Okay, so I'm just going to write the code now, and let's start our array implementation. So before starting our array implementation, we have seen some sort of characteristics of the array. So first one, if I talk about, is the fixed length. So our array is of a fixed length. It has defined length. If we say 5, it got the 5 continuous memory locations in our memory. And the second one is the homogeneous. The homogeneous data type is like when we are saying that every instance, every element is of type integer, then it can't be of type float or anything else. So this is what homogeneous is. And our arrays are mostly homogeneous. And then we have one more thing, which is indexed access. So we can use this indexed to access the element of it. And this is what we will try to do. So now we can move on to our real-world implementation of our array. So I'll jump into there. So there are two methods to implement the arrays in Python. One, a very common method is using of lists. We can simply use the lists and implement the array. For example, if I create an ARR and I say, okay, this is my array, and I say, all right, and then I said print. It's just going to take little time. You can see it's connecting. It's just going to take little time for the first time, and then once it runs, it will run smoothly in the other cells. Okay, you can see it loads up. And now if I run it, I'll see, okay, I could say this is my array, but it has some functionalities which an original array can't have. It is of a fixed length, but this list is not of a fixed length. It's not homogeneous. I can introduce an element in it which is not of integer data type, or which is not even a numerical data type, and it's still going to say, okay, you're good. So if I say or append, and what I have to do is to say, okay, let's put something of this, run it. Okay, it run perfectly fine. And if I run it now again, you can see that even a string, which is Moby, is now injected in that. So this is not an array functionalities, but mostly when we are talking about arrays in Python, we are using lists as a Python, and this is very generally used. The one other method to use or implement the arrays are by using the array module. And what is it? Is that we say import and we say array. And why we use this import? Array is a little model in our Python, and we say, okay, we need that model now, so give us that model, and this will have some of the properties that we are going to see. It will provide us rather than which list can't provide us. Now, for example, if I want to use array and I create a one array in this, I'll say ARR1, and I'll say ARR.ARR. And then it take the parameters. So first of all, the first parameter is I have to tell it a data type. So if I say I, that means an integer. And then after that, I have to provide it with kind of list, like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, let's say 5. Okay, so this is like kind of my list. And if I run it, okay, it's given, all right, so I just put 2. Okay, now it's going to work. All right, it's created me an array. And if I try to see my array, which is ARR1 in this case, I'll say, okay, this is of an integer data type, and these are the characteristics of these things. Let's see if I can access them indexly. If I say ARR1 and give me the second index, Let's see. Yeah, I can access it. It gave me the 3. So that means I can do index access on this type of array also. But the thing is, what if I just make a copy of it? Now what I'm going to do is to introduce a new element, which is a float. So let's change this 3 to 3.3. And let's run it. Nope, it's giving me an error. It's a float object cannot be interpreted as an integer because we already tell them that we are going to create an array of an integer data type. That is why we are not allowed to introduce the float. So this is just a very little functionality of how these arrays are actually going to work. And we will be mostly using lists. We are not using these arrays. And why we are not using these arrays? Because these are not mostly used. And most commonly, lists are used as our arrays. So we'll concentrate on this one and we'll try to solve some problems. And also, one more thing, talking about the list. This is my list. And if I want to change an element, I can also do that. I can do ARR, change the second index to 2000. If I just run it, it runs perfectly fine. And if I run it now, you can see that this is now changed to 2000. So these how arrays are working. In the next section, what we are going to do is to take a few example problems and we'll try to solve them. And I hope this is really clear to you. Okay, goodbye.